here on Car Country.
I'm Henrik Fisker, and this is the 2019 all-electric Fisker Emotion. Since I started working on electric cars in 2007, the battery technology has evolved a lot. We're now at a point where we are as good, if not better, than a gasoline car when it comes to range and charging. It's got a 400-mile range, and it can be charged in as little as 9 minutes.
Modern plug-in cars like the Chevy Volt or Nissan Leaf can take an entire night to fully recharge.
The proportions of the vehicle is completely different. When you look here at the hood, it's extremely low because there is no engine under it, which create these beautiful front fenders. Very long wheelbase, shorten the rear overhang dramatically because we don't have a gas tank, tapering at the rear. We have also incorporated high-tech headlamps. There's no giant door handles, there's just two delicate light strips, and all you do is you just swipe your hand over it and the door will open electrically. The entire wheel barrel is made of carbon fiber. It's about 40% lighter aluminum wheel. Very, very thin LED tail lamps where actually everything is integrated into this one strip. It's autonomous. We incorporated the LiDAR. This is obviously very important for safe autonomous driving. But once the traffic is free and there's an open road, you still want to have fun. And then this is a brilliant car to drive in because it's driver focused, great view over the road. This is the future, and it's coming in 2019.
Welcome, Henrik.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
So this is a pretty sexy car. I want one.
Yeah, we're going to show it actually in January at the CES. We're going to show it actually with hardware for level 5 autonomy, but we will launch it in the end of 2019 with level 4 autonomous. It's kind of unique to have had the experience of one venture and then take those learnings into this venture. And for me, it was clear that we need to make electric cars that actually are better than the current gasoline cars. And a lot of the electric cars that's coming out today and maybe in the next couple of years will still have old technology. And we are really working on the next generation technology.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting, what we were talking about in the hallway, was how do you make these most accessible to everyone? Not everyone can buy a Tesla, not everyone can spend $150,000 on an electric car, and there's not really very many players out there. What's the reason for that?
Well, I think the reason is that the electric car technology is developing so rapidly. It's changing every 2 years, and a lot of the traditional car makers, they don't know when they should step into this market, and probably when they do, it may be the wrong time. They might be betting on the wrong technology and they can't move fast enough. So we are a very light, asset-light company. We can move extremely fast. When we launch our car in 2019, we'll probably have to change the battery technology 2 years later. And we have already designed the car for that. And that's going to be very important to move so fast in this space. Our second car, not this one, but the second one will be more of a family car, which is going to sell close to $30,000. What I think is important to get the real mass market into electric cars is we need to solve two things, which we have solved. One is the range. That's why you see this car has 400-mile range, which is 700 kilometers. The second is the charging time. I don't believe that the mass market wants to sit behind a mall for 45 minutes and charging your car. You want to go, just like you go to a gas station, it takes 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. And we are developing an ultracharger which can charge your car in less than 10 minutes. And we're talking to some of the biggest oil companies in the world to actually put this charger in gas stations because they're going to start losing customers. And this charger, by the way, is not, you don't have to get out of the car. It's also not induction charging. It's a coupler that comes underneath the car. And you just can stay in the car, pay with a credit card, it's connected, and off you go. And you charge as fast as you would fill up your car.
Are you worried about any competitors coming into the landscape?
Not really, because I think many competitors or those who have started up out there, they don't have the knowledge of putting a car on the road, and it's a lot more complicated than people think. You can see there's been some pretty big groups out there that have raised $1 billion and they still don't have a car. It is extremely difficult to get into the car industry, but I also believe if you want to have a sustainable company, you need to change completely the business model, and we have done that too. We have changed the way we sell the car. We have changed the way we service the car. You will never ever have to take a Fisker for service. We make money when our car gets serviced, so it's a whole different business model that we have set up, which we believe is the future of the car industry.
So basically, it's very disruptive, it sounds like.
It's a very disruptive, but I think it's necessary because the car industry, if it knows it today, it just doesn't work. There's too small profits. They're too slow to react to market trends. This is why you can see that there still isn't credible competitor to Tesla. And that's because the traditional car companies, they're too slow. And I actually believe that several of the car companies you see today, the big ones, may end up like Nokia.
Yeah, interesting. So widening out a bit, I think people are also very confused about, in general, the automotive industry, transportation. Some believe that we won't drive cars at all. What do you think of this, all the autonomous, driverless?
Well, I mean, there's clearly a disruption in the industry where, of course, today we suddenly have all these opportunity of getting transported with, ride-hailing services, whether it's Lyft or Uber, whatever they're called. And that means that a lot of younger people, they're waiting to buy a car. I think eventually people will buy a car because a car is still the extension of who you are. You can show your personality. You can leave your old coffee cup in the car, and you can leave your glasses in the car, and you can't do all that in a Uber because you're not going to get it back that is left. But eventually, I think what's going to happen is a divided car industry. You're going to see the big car companies that's going to provide vehicles which may be autonomous for ride-hailing and whatever we call this personalized kind of public transportation, but those products have to be extremely cheap. So if you go and take an Uber or Lyft, you want a cheap ride. This car has to be extremely cheap, and it has to be very reliable, and that will be made by some very big car makers with very, very low profit margins. We are going to be in the other side of the segment, with the emotional segment, and every time you do something emotional, you have a higher profit margin. So we want to be in the side where you actually are going to purchase a car. It may still be autonomous. My dream car is a car where when I'm in a traffic jam, I want to be able to take my hands off the steering wheel and actually sit and do something, and that's what we will provide, but we'll also provide the luxury of you driving yourself if you want to. So I don't think the car purchase will fall away. We will still have people buying cars in the future, but you will have a lot more people taking advantage of this personalized transportation. And of course, you need car makers for both sides of the fence. I think the car makers that are sitting today in the middle is in big trouble, because I think in the future, a lot of people are not going to be they're not going to want to buy a boring sedan, because they're going to say, if I'm going to have a boring ride, which is essentially just, taking me from A to B, they're going to get a cheap ride-hailing service, but when they really want to enjoy something, go to a restaurant and maybe park the car in front or takes the kids up to the mountains or whatever, then they may want to have a cool, different type of vehicle.
And then talking about the international market, China and India, what do you think the future is there?
So I think, of course, the interesting thing about, I think, China and India is that they don't necessarily have to go through the growing pains that Europe and US had, because they're kind of entering the car industry and the car buying market so late. It's almost like what happened with I think, India and China, where they jumped, instead of going to landline phones, they went straight to the mobile phone. And I think India and China has the potential to really go straight to the electric vehicle. But we shouldn't underestimate that you still need to solve the charging issue. You can't have 2 billion people spending an hour charging their cars. It just doesn't work. You would only be able to get 20 people in some sort of charging station a day, in a 24-hour day, and that doesn't work. You need to get to this point. There's a reason why the gas stations work. It's because they can get thousands of people in and out within minutes, and that's what we need to do with the charging, and that's why I believe so strongly we need to solve the charging, and that's what we have done with our new Ultra Charger.
I'd like to take a few questions from the audience. Any questions? No over here, please. Can you?
Yeah, so I heard, so the question was if the charger is based on a new battery technology. No, the charger we have done, just to explain a little detail, it is partly a technology which is called pulse charging. So if you imagine filling up a bottle with a fire hose, you wouldn't be able to fill it up. But if you imagine you're dropping drops into this bottle, but super fast, you can fill it up extremely fast. And one of the issues with a battery by putting too fast electricity into the battery is that it overheats. And by doing the pulse charging with drip feeding, the battery gets to breathe and basically doesn't get overheated. So even with this pulse charging technology, we can charge at today's electric car 2.4 times faster than even the biggest supercharger can do. When we then go to our battery technology, which we're working on, even the first car that comes out, we actually still use the normal lithium-ion batteries, but we have a unique power-dense battery pack, which we're patent pending. And of course, this charger is also patent pending. With this and an 800-volt system, you can now charge even faster because we go into a higher voltage that anybody has today. Most electric cars today, even the latest cars, has 400, 450 volt. And then, of course, when we go to our flexible solid-state technology, you're going to be able to charge a car in 1 to 2 minutes. And the price of the battery technology is about half of what it is today. But that technology, we are estimating, is probably out around 2024, 2025 before it's ready.
Any other questions?
Safety concern?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. So it's not inductive charging we're doing, because inductive charging, you lose a lot of energy. What we're doing is a coupler. So underneath, you drive over this coupler, it gets positioned via auto park, and basically there's a coupler coming up, almost like a plug. So because you don't get out of the car, and because you can't get to it, there's zero safety concerns in it. And that's a huge advantage, I think, in the future, because it's not possible to actually use, for instance, a cable to get so much power, because the cable will be this thick, and it needs to be cooled, so that doesn't work.
I think there was another question. Could you please speak loudly so everyone can hear your question?
That's right.
Oh, Martin has a microphone.
Thank you. In this emotional space that you're putting your car in, what models are you competing with, and what is the price point that makes sense for you?
Well, I think we are competing essentially with everybody who probably has a little bit of excitement about a car. And if you think about the BMWs and Mercedes of the world, they're today all these luxury, sort of premium and luxury makers. They're somewhere between $30,000 to $130,000. And they make tens of millions of cars and sales. Our estimate is we would like to get to about 1.2 million cars a year. That's a $50 billion revenue. And there should be more than space enough. This is not even 1% of the global market in 2029. So we want to be in that market, taking those customers that are ready to move away from some of maybe the old dusty brands. I think the brand perception will change. I give the example with Nokia. I mean, you can look at Tesla. So I think that there will be a whole new brand perception for a lot of people. When they go out and buy an electric car and are emotional about it, I think they're going to want that car from a new car company rather than a traditional one that both make, gasoline cars and electric cars. And the example would be if you decide to become vegan tomorrow, you most likely wouldn't go to McDonald's to buy a salad. Even though you can get a salad there because the brand doesn't fit for a salad.
We just have one more question. That's my question. Right. What are the, you've been in this industry for a long time, what lessons learned do you have that you're bringing forward to the new venture?
So my lessons learned is really that you don't need to spend billions to get these vehicles into production. We are doing what we call B2B. We are working with a very large traditional car company to do some joint work and on certain elements of the car that to us is not important. It's not important who makes the seat frame of our car, who makes the steering rack. We want to concentrate on the technology. in our vehicles. So that's a very important lesson learned. The second is what I mentioned earlier, the disruptive business model, where we'll sell direct to the customer. That's something we can do which traditional car companies can't do because they already have dealers. Of course, Tesla does that, but then we go one step further where we will not actually have dealerships. We will have some experience centers, but our service model is completely different that nobody else have today, and that is a franchise service model where we will have 2,000 franchises in next 3 years. We already have 30, even though we don't have a car on the market yet. And the reason we can do that is because these franchises, they're servicing all electric and hybrids, and we teach them how to do it. We also have invented some machines that can recondition batteries from existing electric and hybrids up to 95%, and we can do it for half the price than if you go to a traditional OEM and buy a replacement battery. And these franchises are paying us every month a franchise fee, and eventually these franchises will be able to service Fisker models, but they will be fully connected. They're already fully connected, and we will have a concierge when, for instance, we will see that your car needs service. We will see your agenda is hooked up with our vehicle, with our connected service, and we will see you on business meetings the whole day, for instance, here. And while you're sitting here, somebody will pick up your car with a digital key, take it for service, bring it back, and you won't even know it was for service.
And in one last sentence, what is your dream for this?
Well, my dream is to not lose the excitement and the love we have for cars, but be able to make clean cars that are better than gasoline cars. And that is exactly what we're doing. And I can't wait to show this car in CES in January. It's going to be very exciting. We've got a lot of good partners that we are working with. We're going to show our LiDAR there. We have integrated 7 LiDARs for autonomous level 5. And that's something that nobody, by the way, has done yet. You have seen these Coke cans that sits on top of all these cars. Believe me, for a car designer, it's very difficult to actually integrate those so it looks good. But we have done that, and you'll see that in CES.
All right. Well, thank you for the insights on the automotive industry. We look forward for more to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you.